I'm talking about the Indian collections at Cambridge, and I'm going to do it in a very wide way to give you some sort of feel for what you can expect if you wish to use these resources. And I'm conscious it's a very wide-ranging audience, some of whom have heard me speak on manuscripts and things before, some have never heard me speak. I'm not going to speak very directly about specific manuscripts. I will talk about what you would find if you came to Cambridge and you're trying to discover what is there and how to use the resources. And because we're putting this onto YouTube, I'll also try and remember to mention what's available online for people from all over the world. And although it's not comprehensive, I think it's a pretty good story. Any university as old as Cambridge had its 800-year anniversary not too long ago, is going to seem a very complex and difficult to navigate place if you've never been there, or even if you've used it a number of times, it can still seem very complicated. But there are many people who can help you, so do not hesitate to ask. And I think one of the most striking things to me is that people do hesitate, and they're working on something, and they don't ask in more general ways, librarians, what is available, and you can miss a lot there. So I'm very happy for anyone to come and see me, tell me what they're working on, and I can give some feel as to what we have and what I'm aware of in other parts of Cambridge. The main resources I'm going to say something about are the Cambridge University Library, the South Asian Studies Center, FAMES, which for our purposes is the Asian faculty, the Divinity Faculty, the Anthropology and Archaeology Faculty, Ancient Indian Iran Trust, the Fitzwilliam Museum, the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, and the colleges. So obviously I'm not going to be able to say a lot about each individual one. But talking first about Cambridge University Library, the clear strength of the University Library's South Asian, Tibetan, and Southeast Asian department, which I'm responsible for, is its manuscripts. And I think the most significant manuscripts are the Buddhist Sanskrit manuscripts, and this is examples of them, just illustrations from them. And it includes the earliest dated illustrated Sanskrit manuscript in the world. The monograph collection is strong on Buddhism, and it's also strong on other religions, especially Hindu, Islamic, Jain, and Sikh material. But the real problem when you use a place like Cambridge, which is so vast, is there are things hidden all over the place that you could easily miss. Some are fairly obvious. So if you're going to use maps, you would normally go to the map department and find our maps there. Having said that, there are some manuscript maps that are kept in the manuscript department, though most manuscript maps are kept in maps. So that kind of thing, you can, if you don't interact with the librarians, you can think you've covered something when you've actually missed where other things might be. Official publications are found in the rare books room, and as you'd expect, rare books are found in the rare books room. And we also have collections that are rich in Asian photographs, as well as printed and manuscript sources, with the Royal Commonwealth Society Library. We have, their library is with us, as is their librarian. So that's what was the British Empire, later the Commonwealth, and originally the Library of the Colonial Society. So that's a library that started in 1868, not here, well, here in London, not in Cambridge, but has been wholly transferred to Cambridge. It has a huge number of things that are unpublished, and especially it strikes me as good for photographs. So when people are publishing something and they think, well, I'd like one photograph, rather than choose a photograph people have seen and that's often been used, it can be nice to spend a day there looking through what they have, find something that suits your topic, and then reproduce it. Thinking of one collection there that's very, very rich is the Queen Mary collection, and it consists of more than 150 volumes, including presentation copies, some in special bindings, and 29 photographic albums. together with an album, Reminiscences of Bombay 1905, which contains addresses presented to Queen Mary. And that's interspersed with 14 watercolors by M.F. Pitawala depicting female costumes. So things you might not expect to find. We also have the Bible Society's library, and it covers Asian language Bibles, as you'd expect. The Bible Society their library started in 1804. It too was in London and is now in Cambridge. But as with so many collections, you have to think that unexpected things can be found. So the Bible Society actually is strong on early grammars, and there's a much wider range of things in the Bible Society than just its Bibles. Something like music, we collect music and we have music in my department, but in the music department you'll find the Lawrence Pickin collection. And Lawrence Pickin was a zoologist. He was born in 1909, died in 2007, so many people, well not many people, but several people here will have met him and known him. And it is a fabulous collection with very, very good Asian coverage and very good South Asian coverage. He was interested in the early part of the last century in what now people call world music. But he was collecting resources, especially printed resources, but also recordings and things, at a time when it wasn't in fashion to be interested in world music. So it's a strong, strong collection. So again, another example of something that you might not expect to be there. Coming back to the main collections I'm responsible for, the real expansion of the library's South Asian collections was sparked in the 1870s. When Daniel Wright, who was surgeon to the British residency at Kathmandu, collected a large number of Sanskrit manuscripts at the suggestion of his brother William Wright, professor of Arabic in Cambridge. And Daniel Wright also sent the first Tibetan block printed books and manuscripts to Cambridge. Easy name to remember because it's the Wright brothers, but nothing to do with aviation. We also have the manuscripts, letters, papers, and some of the books of Edward Biles Cowell, who was the professor of Sanskrit, and these were given to the University Library after his death in 1903. Professor Cecil Bendel collected Sanskrit manuscripts for the university from North India, Nepal, and Bombay with a grant from the Warts Fund in 1884 and 1885. And his own manuscripts and some of his printed books were given between 1906 and 1934. And a collection of letters to him came to the University Library in 1961. So these kind of things give a feel for the resources you might find. Obviously you're expecting the manuscripts, and the manuscripts people left or bought for the library. But when someone's produced an edition or written a more general book, if we have their letters, those letters can often be incredibly rich with them discussing what they're doing or people being critical of what they're doing. And in general, I think it's wise, if you're interested in a particular scholar who was in Cambridge, have a look to see whether we have that scholar's letters. And then if you know if you find out the college of the person when they were at Cambridge, you may find that their college has a lot of that kind of material as well. With regard to the Sanskrit, we had a research grant from the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and I'll actually read out the description of what was to be done. But as you will have guessed, it was Camillo who was one of the major people doing this. He was with us for 3 years and did a fabulous job of cataloging our manuscripts, and many were digitized, and completed it so that we have complete catalog records for our Sanskrit manuscripts, which is an unusual thing, online. The description of the project was that the primary aim was to create a digital multimedia archive of the collections of Sanskrit manuscripts held by the Cambridge University Library, as well as complete an online catalog. And this project, it continues to promote the study of religious and intellectual traditions of South Asia, using the archive as documentation and as direct input for computer-assisted philological and historical research. And I think the project met those requirements, and although the project is no longer employs anyone, things are still happening. And it's striking that lots of people got involved in a voluntary basis to do various things in the project, and those people continue to do things because they weren't part of the paid part of the project. And for that matter, we still call on Camillo to do certain things for us that he doesn't get paid for as well. We have Pauli and Sinhalese manuscripts, and these were bought from Thomas William Rhys Davids in 1874. So a very famous figure and a very significant collection. The University Library purchased Jaina manuscripts from Johann Georg Buhler in 1876, 1877. So again, interesting material. All of this has been catalogued. James Drummond Anderson was the lecturer in Bengali, and he left his collection of printed books largely from Bengal and Assam, and they came to the University Library in 1922. And Percy McQueen presented the University Library with a manuscript collection of folk poetry and songs in Tamil and Malayalam in between 1957 and 1961. We have earlier materials like the Reverend Claudius Buchanan. He was on a journey through South India in 1806, and he collected fascinating Syriac manuscripts from Travancore and Hebrew manuscripts from Cochin. And in 1805, he gave 65 volumes of early printed books from Calcutta and Serampore to us. So we're quite strong on early printing in India. Colonel Augustus Cotgrave Honer's collection of Indian manuscripts, Hindi, Punjabi, Sanskrit, Urdu, Persian, and Arabic from Lucknow in the 1860s was given to Corpus Christi College and is on deposit at the University Library. So once again, it's a tricky thing of where do you look for things. You wouldn't expect Corpus Christi necessarily to keep its Oriental manuscripts with us, but it does, as do some of the King's College manuscripts. But if you were looking for a South Asian, so again, the quickest way to find your way around is ask somebody who knows, and they can give you some feel for it. In 1726, George Lewis presented the University Library with a beautiful piece of furniture, full of manuscripts as well, but the furniture is quite striking. A monumental cabinet lettered Bibliotheca Orientalis, and this included Persian and Arabic manuscripts he'd collected in India. And his collections contain many interesting items, including 2 boxes of Indian playing cards. In the University Library, predominantly Persian and Arabic collections from India, like Lewis's, and the manuscripts of Robert Emlyn Loft and Walter Sibbald Adey and various others come under the Near and Middle Eastern department, as do Syriac and Hebrew. So something coming from India, if it's in those languages, is going to be covered by a different department. We make a point of trying to have exhibitions of material and making them available to the public. And the present exhibition in the Cambridge University Library is called Curious Objects, and it includes much from the Lewis cabinet. We have a good number of things, including the playing cards, and they're very rarely on display. So if people are interested in that sort of thing, it's worth seeing. And in that exhibition, there's a picture of the cabinet, which is, as I said, is a beautiful piece of furniture. But in the old library, our library is from the 1930s, in the old building, it had a perfect position for it, where so the black and white photograph makes it look very, very good. Nowadays, it's kept on the 4th floor of Cambridge University Library, just outside the librarian's office. That's not, I think, because it's such an important thing. It's because it's the one place where the ceilings are high enough that the cabinet can actually fit in. Another cabinet we have is Sir Jg Scoffs Collection. And this is Southeast Asian material collected in Burma when he was superintendent of the Shan states, and it was given to the library in a large oak cabinet after his death and the death of his brother, Sir Robert Forsyth Scott, who was master of St. John's College. And it includes many Pali, Burmese, and Shan manuscripts, letters, manuscript maps, and ephemera. So that's my main example of where you would normally go for manuscripts maps to the map room. The manuscript maps from the Scott collection are kept in the manuscripts stacks and fetched to the manuscripts room. And actually a lot of what was originally in these cabinets isn't in them anymore. But if you see them where they have glass fronts, we've kept things that look quite nice. But for conservation purposes and the preservation of material, we've tended to take things out of the cabinets and put them elsewhere. Richard James Wilkinson presented manuscripts and lithographed and printed books in Malay in 1900 and further manuscripts in 1910. And they include the manuscripts of Thomas Sapernius, which came to the University Library in 1632, and include some impressive Malay manuscripts from Sumatra. So in terms of the material in our department, the collecting starts in earnest in about 1632. If you're interested in the papers of political figures, we do have many, and they are kept in the manuscript. They're treated as Western manuscripts. So we have the papers of Lord Crewe, Sir Samuel Hoare, both of them were Secretaries of State for India. We have the papers of Lord Mayo and the papers of Lord Harding, which were both viceroys, and they're treated as Western manuscripts in terms of where you have them fetched to. That's an overview of the Cambridge University Library, but the striking thing about Cambridge is the complexity of the other institutions that you might want to make use of. So I'll say a little something about each of them that I can remember, and then people will be able to tell me the ones I've missed. The South Asian Studies Center, many people will know it. It was established in May 1964. And it's responsible for promoting within the university the study of India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the Himalayan kingdoms, and Burma. It's strong on books, pamphlets, periodicals, official publications, maps, and manuscripts, all of which you'd expect. But where it has a strength far beyond what we have is in works of art and on films. It's very good on early films. And it's very strong on photographs, though we do have photographs too, and very, very strong on audio recordings relating to South and Southeast Asia. And they had a program, I think from the very beginning in the early 60s, of recording scholars. And they're quite fascinating. So if you're working on something and there is a scholar with any connection with Cambridge, see if they have a recording, and sometimes they have hours of interview with that person talking about their academic career and the things they worked on. They're well worth having a look at. They're of interest, just out of interest, but if you're working in the same area as someone, they're quite fascinating interviews that they did. And 1964 is fairly early for doing that kind of thing, I think. FAMES, the Asian faculty, is the faculty where much of the teaching is done, and it has a strong library. Its library starts in 1935, and its main purpose is to support the teaching and research of the faculty. Cambridge University Library feels it started in 1416, or that's the first written record of it, though obviously there are manuscripts in Cambridge being used before that time. The Divinity Faculty, again, another good library, and it's strong on the things you would expect: Buddhism, other religions, Hindu, Islamic, Jain, Sikh sources. Being Cambridge, it's old-fashioned names for things. Divinity is what in a modern university would be called the study of religion. It's not simply divinity. Anthropology and archaeology have long had an interest in South Asia in Cambridge, and they have a very good library, and they have a museum, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Ancient Indian Iran Trust is in Cambridge, and it's a good example of one of the strengths of Cambridge. there are so many institutions, some are within the university, some outside, but they're well integrated. And I think many people don't even realize that. Some people would just take for granted the Ancient Indian Land Trust was part of the university. It was formally established with the creation of the Ancient Indian Land Trust in 1978. And originally it comprised the libraries of the Sanskrit professor, Sir Harold Bailey, who there are people here who will have met before he died. And although he was professor of Sanskrit, if people don't know anything about him, he also worked on the languages of Central Asia, Khotanese in particular. So it's an amazing library. And then the Van Lohausen's Art History Library was left to them and is there. The Fitzwilliam Museum, it has an exhibition on at the moment, if you're in Cambridge, which is well worth going to see, an exhibition about color. And we have a small number of exhibits in this exhibition. It's mainly about medieval Western manuscripts and how colors are used and created in manuscripts. But we've put on display the results of our pigment analysis. So the company Analytic provides a reflectance spectroscopy machine to the chemistry department in Cambridge. And we were fortunate to have the pigments of some of our manuscripts analyzed by that machine in a laboratory at the Fitzwilliam Museum. And this gives exact results for specific source materials used to create colors. So many of the things that scholars have said, well, I assume they use this, and I guess they would have used that. This proves it in a scientific way or disproves it. So we found things like azurite, malachite, indigo, lead white, red lead found in our manuscripts. And the yellows in some of the illustrations fluoresced very strongly under UV light, while others did not. And that suggests that yellows used in some folios are organic and others are inorganic. So you see that sort of thing in that exhibition. The actual captions on our material don't say too much about it, but the catalog for the exhibition is there. And if you turn, and you can carry it around with you without having to buy the thing, and if you turn to those particular manuscripts that we've got, they'll say something about our pigment analysis. The Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, we had a large exhibition, Buddha's Word, which is now finished, but it had substantial exhibits of our Tibetan and Sanskrit manuscripts. And it was an unusual thing for us. It was a great success with outreach to many, including school children. They had a session of school children doing traditional Tibetan printing. So they had the wood blocks, and then they could put ink on them and do some printing and make a proper mess. And many adults who would be less likely to attend a library exhibition came to that exhibition. And it's remarkable for me to see our manuscripts in a very airy space, mixed in with objects from the relevant cultures. And though the exhibition focused on books, it was not just as objects of learning and study, but very much as relics of the Buddha and sacred objects in their own right. The colleges at Cambridge are a complex thing to navigate as well. But as I've said, if you're using the works of a Cambridge academic, it's wise to check that what the relevant college has in terms of books, manuscripts, correspondence, donated papers. So for instance, Christ has the W.H.D. Rouse Indian collection that was given after his death in 1950. It comprises about 600 volumes and a large number of pamphlets relating to the religions, languages, history, philosophy, folklore, literature, architecture, and geography of South Asian subcontinent. So you never know what you'll find in Cambridge, and people are always finding things that they don't expect to find. So for instance, Cambridge University Library has on deposit the Oriental manuscripts of Eton College, which of course is a school, and it's not a school that's in Cambridge, so people wouldn't expect that, but it is there. I'm not sure how many people realize it. Then we do, I think as I mentioned before, we hold corpus and E. Pote collection from King's College, so some of that kind of material. that's my overview of the resources in Cambridge. People are welcome to come and use them. I know we have some authors here and various people who have never been to Nakura before, but you'd be more than welcome to come and see the kind of things that are in Cambridge and to make use of them. We allow cameras to be used to take photographs, which is a relatively recent thing, so that works quite smoothly. And that's about all I've got to say, I think.